On a deluge-soaked southern night in the U.S., a young black mechanic just finishing his graveyard shift stumbles upon an upscale vehicle overturned in a ditch. Trapped inside is the CEO of a renowned Japanese automotive firm, mere moments from being engulfed by flames. Without a moment's hesitation, the mechanic rescues the man, then quietly vanishes into the darkness. Little did he know, this selfless act would transport him to Japan and unlock the door to an unforeseen future. What unfolds next will deeply touch anyone with a conscience. Before we delve into this narrative, tell us where you're tuning in from. We value your insights. The rain wasn't a downpour. It was a gentle caress across the landscape. A fine mist that blurred the world yet stung subtly when whipped by the wind. It glazed the narrow county road, transforming it into a shimmering silver ribbon under the moon's soft glow. A single, flickering street lamp hummed languidly, casting its anemic light onto the asphalt like a fading ember. Jamal leaned into his driver's seat, eyes heavy-lidded, face taut with exhaustion. The venerable Ford pickup rumbled beneath him, tires droning over the cracked pavement. The heater was largely ineffective, but the cabin carried the familiar sense of burnt oil and iron, the aroma of 12 relentless hours spent beneath engines tightening fasteners and evading scorching exhaust pipes. He wore a dark, grease-stained hoodie, a name patch on his chest, Jamal T., its stitching worn to threads. He couldn't recall when it had been sewn there, perhaps when he still believed the job was temporary. One hand on the steering wheel, the other instinctively massaged his aching neck. 1:12 a.m. The dashboard clock cast a faint blue luminescence. Just a few more miles and he'd be home. Back to his grandmother's weary smile and the familiar cadence of her cough echoing through the hall. Back to Maud, dozing on the recliner, the television still on, news anchors speaking to an empty room. Another night, another grind. Jamal never complained. Complaints rarely changed anything. He turned the radio dial. Static, then a slow, soulful melody, low and melancholic. He tapped the wheel in sync. Rain danced on the windshield, a calming rhythmic patter. For a fleeting moment, everything felt suspended. Then his brow furrowed. Something was amiss. Up ahead, the road's edge dipped into a ravine. There, just beyond the guardrail, a metallic form lay unnaturally twisted under the dim light. He blinked, slowed the truck and squinted through the rain. It was a vehicle resting on its side, half submerged in the ditch, half crumpled by its own mass. Smoke lazily unfurled from the hood like a long-held breath. Jamal's stomach tightened. He pulled over, engaging the truck's park brake, wipers screeching back and forth. For 5 agonizing seconds he remained motionless, simply staring. Memories surged. News reports, police mistaking Good Samaritans for culprits, a cousin apprehended and cuffed merely for appearing out of place. He muttered, "Damn it." He looked down at his own wet, brown, calloused skin. Then he opened the door anyway. The rain felt colder than it ought to. He jogged toward the wreckage, boots sliding slightly in the mud, the acrid scent of burning plastic growing stronger with each stride. The car, a luxury Lexus model, was severely crushed on the driver's side. The windshield was a mosaic of fractures. Smoke seeped from beneath the hood and from within. "Hey!" Jamal shouted, his breath clouding in the chill. "Can you hear me?" No response. He descended the incline, mud clinging to his ankles. The closer he got, the more the tension in his chest intensified. A faint groan pierced the drumming rain. He rushed to the driver's side. Through the fractured glass he discerned movement. An Asian man, perhaps Japanese, in his late 40s, slumped against the deployed airbag. His face was cut and bleeding, one leg pinned between the dashboard and the contorted frame. His lips barely moved, a whispered, "Help." Jamal's throat constricted. "I've got you," he affirmed, his voice resolute, more to steady himself than the injured man. "I've got you. Okay, just hold on." He pulled at the door. Nothing. The frame was warped, the door compressed like a sardine tin. He tried again, still jammed. Damn. He scanned for a pry tool. Nothing but mud, stones, and broken branches. He stepped back and slammed his shoulder into the door. Pain seared down his spine. Gritting his teeth, he adjusted his stance and struck again and again. On the 4th impact, the door yielded slightly, springing ajar with a wrenching metallic shriek. Inside, the man also cried out. Sorry, hang in there." Jamal wedged his fingers into the gap, arms trembling, and pried the door open just enough to reach inside. The smoke in the cabin was denser now. He coughed violently, eyes watering. "Can you move your arms?" The man nodded weakly. "Okay, I'm going to pull you out. Your leg's pinned, but I'll be careful." "All right." The man nodded again, eyes wide with agony but filled with trust. Perhaps it was Jamal's voice, or perhaps the sheer terror of perishing alone in that vehicle. Jamal reached beneath the man's arms and pulled. The man's weight sagged heavily against him. He heard bone grind. The man screamed again, clutching his side. Jamal paused. I know. I'm sorry. I've got you." The heat intensified. Behind the car, a small inferno had blossomed beneath the hood, flames licking at the front wheels. Jamal yanked harder. Metal scraped against metal. The leg finally freed with a sickening twist, and Jamal dragged the man from the car, half slipping down the embankment as he did. The two collapsed in the wet grass, both coughing, both trembling. Then a loud pop followed by a booming explosion. The Lexus erupted in flames. The impact stole Jamal's breath. He shielded the man with his body, embers raining down like luminous fireflies. The heat was sudden, intense, merciless. The man lay there, eyes unfocused, lips moving silently. Jamal leaned closer. What are you saying?" The man barely managed. "Phone. Inside coat." Jamal reached into the blood-soaked inner pocket and retrieved a smartphone. Screen cracked but operational. He opened the emergency dialer and punched in 911. County Route 82 just past Lansborough Ridge. Car accident. 1 injured. Severe leg trauma. He's alive. He needs help. Fast. The dispatcher requested his name. He hesitated, his gaze drawn to the fire's glow. The sound of sirens was still distant, perhaps 10 minutes away. The dispatcher asked again, "Sir, are you the caller? What's your name?" Jamal clenched his jaw. "Just tell them to hurry," he stated and disconnected the call. He looked down at the man, now unconscious but breathing. Rain cleansed the blood from his face. The fire's orange reflection danced in puddles. Jamal rose. His hands were shaking. Every fiber of his being screamed to flee, because in this part of the country, a young black man alone at a car wreck isn't granted the benefit of the doubt. He gets questions. He gets suspicion. He gets handcuffs. But he didn't leave. Not yet. Instead, he pulled the man a little further from the inferno and crouched behind a nearby slope, partially concealed by trees, shadows, and the hill's curve. He remained low, hands slick with blood and rain, breathing heavily, and he watched. Every muscle in his body pleaded with him to run, to vanish, but his conscience held him captive like chains. Minutes stretched, long and arduous. Every second brought a question. What if someone saw him? What if the police arrived and asked who had pulled the man out? Would they believe him? Would they thank him or cuff him? Then red lights. An ambulance pulled up, closely followed by a sheriff's cruiser. Sirens hushed. 2 medics sprang out, rushing down with a stretcher. The man groaned again as they lifted him. One of the deputies walked toward the wreck, flashlight beam cutting through the smoke. Jamal remained motionless, holding his breath. From his concealed vantage point, he saw the Asian man, still conscious, point weakly back toward the road, toward where Jamal had disappeared. The medic nodded, exchanged words with the officer, but no one looked Jamal's way. No one saw the young man in the shadows. Jamal watched until the ambulance doors closed, tail lights glowing like the last embers of a dying fire. Then silently he stood, turned, and vanished into the night. The white walls of the hospital room gleamed under the gentle Tokyo light, pristine and tranquil as if untouched by the world's chaos. Monitors chirped in a steady rhythm beside the bed where Mr. Kenji Takahashi, president and founder of Takahashi Motors, lay still, his leg encased in an elaborate brace, ribs tightly bound beneath his hospital gown. Yet it wasn't the physical pain that kept him awake at night. It was the face. The young man's face, brown-skinned, sharp jawline, eyes wide with a mix of fear and compassion, hands trembling, soaked in blood that wasn't his own. A voice piercing the storm. "I've got you." The warmth of a stranger's body shielding him from the explosion. The way the young man disappeared before the sirens even arrived. Weeks had elapsed since the accident on that desolate American road. Still, every time Kenji closed his eyes he saw that young man again. Not just the image but the sensation. The strength in his arms, the urgency in his voice, the profound silence he left behind. He couldn't forget. More than that, he refused to. Because men like that, people like that, didn't simply enter your life and disappear. Not if you possessed any shred of honor. Kenji gazed out the window as the early winter clouds drifted over Tokyo. A soft knock interrupted his thoughts. His assistant entered, bowing respectfully. "Sir, the investigator. He's found something." Kenji straightened in bed, his heart skipping a beat. "Show me." On the tablet screen, a grainy street camera photograph. A battered Ford pickup parked roadside, a partial license plate number. Then a DMV record. The name, Jamal Thompson. Age 20. Resident of Lansborough County, Mississippi. A blurry but unmistakable photo. It was him. Kenji's chest tightened. "That's the one." The assistant hesitated. "Shall I send flowers, perhaps?" "No." Kenji's voice was quiet but resolute. "Book a flight. I want to meet him in person." The air hung heavy with motor oil and cigarette smoke inside Gibson's Auto Repair, a low-roofed cinder block shop on the town's outskirts. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting pale reflections on chipped toolboxes and dented fenders. A country radio station played softly in the background, a mix of static and twang. Jamal crouched beside a rusted Ford Explorer, wrench in hand, sweat beading on his temple, his shirt clinging to his back, hands blackened with brake dust and grease. "You almost done under there, boy?" Gibson barked from the front office, sipping from a stained thermos. "Nearly," Jamal muttered. He loathed the old man's habit of calling him boy, as if he were 12, but he held his tongue. Paycheck came on Fridays, and right now that was the only thing keeping the lights on at home. A bell jingled at the shop's front door. Jamal heard unfamiliar footsteps, clean, deliberate, unlike those of the usual beer-bellied customers. He rolled out from beneath the car and sat up. A man stood there, impeccably dressed in a charcoal suit, his face calm and unreadable, distinguished by graying hair, a cane in one hand. His eyes, however, were piercingly sharp, as if they absorbed everything. "Mr. Jamal Thompson?" the man inquired. Jamal froze. Yeah. Who's asking?" The man took a step forward, extending a hand. "My name is Kenji Takahashi." Jamal didn't take it. "That's supposed to mean something?" Kenji smiled faintly. "To most people, yes. I'm the president of Takahashi Motors." Jamal blinked. "Wait, like the car company?" Kenji nodded. A heavy silence settled between them. Jamal's heart pounded, but his expression remained impassive. This had to be a mistake or a scam or worse. Kenji spoke softly. "You pulled me out of my car the night it caught fire. You saved my life." Jamal stared. How'd you find me?" "There was a piece of your license plate on a traffic camera. I had to look. I needed to." Jamal glanced at the open garage door as if expecting someone to emerge and shout, "Gotcha. I didn't do it for thanks. I just..." He shook his head. "I wasn't going to leave a man to die." "I know," Kenji said. "That's why I'm here." Another beat of silence. "I'd like to offer you something, Mr. Thompson. Something more than just gratitude." Jamal narrowed his eyes. "What are you talking about?" "I want you to come to Japan to train. My company has the most advanced automotive engineering program in Asia. I will cover everything: flights, housing, instruction. You have hands meant for building, for fixing. I saw it, and I believe that kind of skill deserves a future." The words hung in the air like a held breath. Jamal didn't answer. He couldn't, because it defied logic. This man, this affluent, powerful CEO, was presenting an opportunity that sounded like something from a film. For what? For simply doing the right thing. He looked down at his hands, the grime beneath his nails, the cracked skin, and then he laughed, a short, bitter sound. "You serious?" he asked. "You flew all the way here for me?" Kenji tilted his head. "You saved my life. I don't forget things like that." Jamal glanced toward the back of the shop where Gibson leaned in the office, clearly eavesdropping. He looked down again. He yearned to believe it was real. But life had taught him better than to believe in fairy tales. "I'll think about it," he finally said, his voice guarded. "Good," Kenji replied. "But I do hope you say yes." He handed Jamal a crisp envelope containing his personal contact information, bowed politely, and turned to depart. That night, Jamal sat at the kitchen table in the dim light of a single bulb. Miss Thelma stirred her tea with arthritic fingers. His mother folded laundry nearby. He recounted everything. When he finished, silence. Then his mother spoke. You saved that man, baby. Maybe now it's his turn to do right by you. Miss Thelma offered a slow, tired smile. Your hands have the same steadfastness your granddaddy had. He never had a chance to go far. Maybe you do. Jamal looked at the envelope again. He didn't seek riches nor fame. He desired only one thing. A garage of his own, a place where people trusted him with their engines and perhaps one day with something more than that, hope. He took a deep breath and nodded. 2 years. That's the duration Jamal Thompson had dedicated to Tokyo. 2 years of arduous effort, determination and quiet learning. Absorbing everything from electric drivetrains to diagnostic calibration, from microtorque balancing to customer service etiquette in a language he initially barely comprehended. But he appeared every single day, first in, last out in the training bay. They called him Techo no Kokoro, the heart of steel. It brought a smile to his face, even though he'd never requested a nickname. He simply desired a future and he constructed it brick by brick, with hands that once tightened rusted bolts in Mississippi now adjusting precision robotics in Japan. At graduation, Mr. Takahashi clapped him on the shoulder, smiling like a proud father and declared, Go home and build your dream. You possess everything you need. And so he did. Back in Lansborough, the air carried familiar scents. Cut grass, warm asphalt, diesel from old pickups rumbling through town. But Jamal returned with more than just skill. He returned with a blueprint. He purchased the old hardware store on the corner of Washington and 6th. He gutted it, rebuilding it from the ground up. Thompson Auto Tech. The sign proclaimed in bold metallic letters beneath a stylized logo that blended Japanese simplicity with American muscle. Inside, everything gleamed. Floor tiles in checkered black and white, lift bays imported from Nagoya, laser alignment rigs, a Japanese-coded AI diagnostic scanner most people in the state had never even heard of. On the front counter, in a matte black frame, rested a handwritten letter in English, signed by Mr. Kenji Takahashi. Jamal Thompson is a technician of unmatched work ethic, integrity, and intelligence. I entrust him with the honor of representing our philosophy of excellence anywhere in the world. Jamal looked at it every morning like a silent prayer. He wore his new coveralls with pride. A clean logo on the chest, no oil stains yet. The first week he opened his doors early, unlocked the glass front and waited. No one came. Initially he rationalized it as word of mouth. People needed time to adjust, they didn't yet know what he could do. But by week 3 reality began to whisper. Passers-by looked in. Some nodded politely. Some glanced, hesitated, then crossed the street. One woman entered, brows furrowed, surveyed the shiny machines and asked flatly, Do you do normal cars or just imports? Jamal smiled. All of them, ma'am. I trained overseas but I can work on anything with wheels. She gave a tight-lipped nod and left without booking an appointment. By month 2 the excuses became repetitive. Oh, my brother-in-law handles my brakes. I've always gone to Gibson's, he's been here forever. I just don't trust those new machines, you know. The worst came from a man in a John Deere cap who stepped inside, took one look at Jamal's skin and said, Didn't know you were the owner, then turned around before Jamal could speak. He stood in the doorway after the man left, breathing hard, fists clenched behind his back. They didn't articulate it aloud, they didn't need to. Nights grew longer. The showroom lights hummed for no one. The lift sat idle. Tools gathered dust. Once he saw a line of 3 trucks outside Gibson's down the street, one with a muffler practically dragging. He knew he could have fixed it for half the price and twice the precision, but they never came. And perhaps deep down they never would. Back home bills accumulated. His mother noticed the slump in his shoulders. Miss Thelma had stopped inquiring about business. You've achieved more than any of us ever dreamed, she whispered one night, her voice frail with age. But this town's been slumbering a long time, baby, and waking up is a slow process, sometimes impossible. Jamal sat at the kitchen table staring at a ledger that no longer balanced. He had adhered to the rules, worked harder than anyone, remained silent when insulted, smiled when ignored. But now the silence wasn't just in the shop. It resonated in his soul. One afternoon he called in a boy for a tire rotation. A teenager, perhaps 16, brought in an old Civic that shook when turning. Jamal diagnosed the problem in 2 minutes flat, fixed it in 30. The boy remarked, "Thanks, man. You really know your stuff." Then added, "My dad said not to come here, but I figured I'd try." Jamal paused. "What did your dad say?" The kid shifted uncomfortably. "He said you'd probably charge too much or maybe mess it up." "And did I?" The boy looked him in the eye. "Nah, you're better than Gibson. Way better." Jamal watched him drive away, then walked back inside the empty shop and screamed into the walls. He didn't desire fame, handouts, or charity. He simply wanted the same opportunity everyone else received. The chance to be judged by his work, not his skin. And the most painful part was he was beginning to doubt if that would ever be possible. They called it the Takahashi Tomorrow Unveil, an industry spectacle hosted at the Grand Pavilion in Manhattan, with 400 journalists, executives, engineers, and investors from across the globe packed shoulder to shoulder beneath crystal chandeliers and LED walls the size of small theaters. Cameras were positioned in every corner. Live streams buzzed online with millions of viewers awaiting the company's next groundbreaking leap in automotive technology. The air hummed with technical jargon and strained laughter over wine glasses. Words like breakthrough, electric autonomy, and crash avoidance optimization drifted through the air like expensive perfume. Polished suits, perfectly trimmed beards. Business cards slipped like daggers between polite smiles. Backstage, a man adjusted his tie, not because it was crooked, but because his hands wouldn't stop trembling. Kenji Takahashi was not a man prone to faltering, not in 40 years. His reputation was built on precision and restraint. But tonight he felt an ancient emotion stir within him. Not nerves, not anxiety, but raw, unfiltered feeling, something he hadn't allowed past his defenses in decades. The host announced his name. A ripple of polite applause echoed across the grand room as Mr. Takahashi stepped onto the stage, slow and steady, his cane tapping softly against the polished floor. The lights dimmed, all eyes turned, silence spread, thick and expectant. He smiled faintly, then gazed out, not at the cameras, not at the executives in the front rows, but somewhere beyond them, as if peering through time. "Before I speak about our new model," he began, his English clear and measured, "I need to speak of a moment that nearly ended my life and then gave it back to me." The room shifted. "This story is not on our website. It is not in the press kit, but it is the only reason I am standing before you today." He paused. The screen behind him changed, not to a car render but to a photograph. A burned-out Lexus overturned in a ditch, smoke still curling from the wreckage. Gasps flickered across the audience. "A little over 2 years ago, I was driving alone through rural Mississippi. A trip that had extended longer than it should have. I was tired, distracted. I took a turn too late. My car flipped and caught fire. My leg was shattered. My chest collapsed." He exhaled slowly. His voice softened. "I remember the heat, the smoke, the pain. But what I remember most was a young man's hands pulling me from that wreck." Another beat. He was a stranger, a mechanic 20 years old, impoverished, black. He had no reason to stop for a man like me. No reward, no camera, no guarantee anyone would believe he wasn't involved. He scanned the room, then stopped. But he stopped. He broke open the door. He carried me from the fire. He called for help. And before anyone arrived, he disappeared. Murmurs rippled. I found him later. His name is Jamal Thompson. He had no interest in attention. He simply said it was the right thing to do. The photo on the screen changed to a still from a security camera. Jamal's face, grainy and shadowed. Then another. Him at Takahashi's training center in Tokyo, bent over an engine, utterly focused. The audience leaned in now, silent as stone. "Our new vehicle," Takahashi continued, "is the most advanced we've ever produced. But more important than its range or power is the technology inspired by that night. It will come standard with crash recognition intelligence capable of automatically alerting emergency services, locating passengers and relaying vitals. Because I should have died that night, but I didn't, because someone decided my life was worth saving." His voice cracked ever so slightly. He pressed on. "I would not be here if not for a young man this country often overlooks, and I believe it's time we stop overlooking him." He turned slightly, gesturing off stage. "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the man who saved my life, Mr. Jamal Thompson." The silence shattered like a wave against concrete. The doors at the side of the ballroom swung open. At first, Jamal didn't move. He stood just beyond the threshold, wearing his finest navy blue suit, appearing stiff, uncomfortable, as if unsure where to place his hands. Then the spotlight found him. Cameras swiveled like a storm. Reporters twisted in their chairs. A few stood, then more. He walked slowly, each step echoing not just against the floor, but through every day he had stood in that empty garage, waiting for someone to give him a chance. When he reached the stage, Kenji stepped aside. Jamal shook his hand quietly, a firm but uncertain grip. Their eyes met for a moment. Then Kenji raised their joined hands and the room rose. Applause surged, not polite, not rehearsed, but thunderous, uncontrollable. A few people cheered. Some wept. Jamal blinked against the light. For a second his throat constricted. The sound was deafening, but inside his chest, all he could hear was his grandmother's voice whispering, "They'll see you one day, baby." Today they did. They called it the Garage of Hope. Now, the name wasn't Jamal's idea. It began as a headline in the Sunday paper, a piece written after the Takahashi unveiling that gained national traction. But the name stuck. People painted it on murals. Local high schoolers wore it on t-shirts. And Jamal, he didn't argue because something about it felt true, even if it hadn't always been. The shop that once echoed with loneliness now hummed like a heartbeat. By 8 in the morning the lot was already full. Pickup trucks, sedans, minivans, even the occasional hybrid or vintage coupe. Appointments were booked 3 weeks in advance. The phones rang non-stop. People arrived early just to converse with Jamal, to shake his hand, to say they'd seen the speech, read the article, heard the story on the radio. Some were customers. Some were simply there to observe, to experience what it felt like to stand in a place where a dream had refused to perish. He tried to remain humble, kept his sleeves rolled, still got under the lifts, still cleaned the bays himself on Fridays. But people noticed things like the way he paused every time someone who once walked past without a glance now entered the door with their head slightly bowed. Like the way he looked them in the eye and said, "Thanks for giving me a shot," even when they didn't deserve the grace. They came in slowly at first. The ones who had avoided him, judged him, ignored him. Some simply said, "I didn't know." Some brought their children and told them to watch, to learn. Some said nothing at all, just paid full price, left generous tips and nodded on their way out. That was enough. The photograph went up on the back wall, right next to the lift where he performed his first solo transmission. It was framed in black walnut, gently illuminated from above. In it, Jamal stood beside Kenji Takahashi under a soft Tokyo rain. Both soaked, both smiling, hands clasped. No press, no lights, just two men who had kept each other alive in different ways. But that wasn't the most important thing in the shop. That title belonged to the small classroom tucked in the back, behind a sliding steel door painted matte red. It used to be a storage closet. Now it held 3 workbenches, a whiteboard, and a second-hand coffee machine that barely functioned but kept the place smelling warm. Every Tuesday and Thursday night, Jamal conducted free classes, hands-on mechanical training for local black and brown teenagers who lacked funds for trade school, who didn't have fathers in the business, who had no one telling them they could. He taught them everything he knew: how to listen to an engine, how to interpret a torque chart, how to remain calm when a bolt refused to budge. But more than that, he taught them something textbooks didn't cover: how to enter a room knowing you're good enough, even when no one else thinks so. One night after class, a kid named Mike, 15, rail thin, always late but always curious, lingered. He stood in front of the photo on the wall and said, "You really saved that guy." Jamal leaned against the counter, wiping oil from his knuckles. "Yeah, and he really saved me back." Jamal nodded slowly. "In more ways than one." Mike looked down. "You think I could ever be someone like that?" Jamal didn't answer immediately. He simply walked over, placed a hand on the boy's shoulder and said, "You already are. You just don't know it yet." That Saturday the town held a small ceremony. The mayor presented him with a key to the city. A few old-timers offered tight handshakes and looser apologies. Channel 5 News did a live segment. He stood there, tie slightly crooked, Mama and Miss Thelma sitting front row in folding chairs with little name cards taped on. Cameras flashed. Reporters posed questions, but Jamal's eyes kept drifting back to those 2 women. One who raised him and one who held the house together when life tried to tear it apart. As the crowd applauded, Jamal looked at them and his throat caught. He stepped to the mic. "No one owes me anything. he began, his voice steady. I didn't save that man to get here. I saved him because it was the right thing to do. What came after? That's not just mine. That's my mama's. That's my grandma's. That's every neighbor who fed me when the fridge was empty. Every teacher who saw something in me when I didn't see it in myself. He paused. People think saying thank you is small, but that one thank you, just one, saved more than a life. It saved a dream. Not just mine, but the dreams of every kid who walks into my garage and sees what's possible. He turned to look at them, his people, his town. See, gratitude doesn't just pay back a debt, it builds a future. Then he stepped down from the stage, walked over to his mother and grandmother and knelt, one hand gently resting on each of theirs. And for the first time in a long time he didn't feel like he was proving anything. He just smiled. They smiled back. And that was everything. Join us to share meaningful stories by hitting the like and subscribe buttons. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell to start your day with profound lessons and heartfelt empathy.